Meeting started. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have Tom Beers missing today. He called in, said he was ill. Any changes to the agenda?
No,
Approval of the March 27, 24 minutes.
make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Any other public comments other than what we're gonna talk about tonight? Okay. Unfinished business, none. Let's get on to the public hearing on 152 Shoreview. I'd like to just say a couple things and have the applicant explain what you want to do and why you want to do it. I noted that, and we all been out to the site, but you have an extremely challenging lot to build on. Looked like to me. One of the problems I had out there, you're supposed to have it staked, survey stake. Before we go out there and take a look at it, there was no survey staking. In the application, it says there's a requirement for that. I don't tell you. They weren't there when I was out there. It appears your neighbor's decks on your property. Something that you need to, I guess, to you. It looks like to me, we have 5 variants requested. To me, the most egregious is moving the structure from 37 feet to 10 feet from the property line on the north side. The size of the house is large for that lot. You have 2588 square foot and almost a full basement. Those are kind of my opening comments on this. Anything anybody want to add to that before the applicant?
I'll save my comments for
Okay,
later.
good.
Yep.
Okay, please do your presentation. Right there is fine.
No, don't.
No, but
Oh,
I'll send a mic for Zoom.
I think they like to use the mic now. Thank you.
Otherwise, the people on
Mic
Zoom,
on?
is there Zoom participants, Rod? Do we have Zoom participants?
Working.
I'd like to get that for the minutes. If anybody signed on there.
Yeah, so my name is Ed Weir. I'm an architect and working with the homeowner, Priscilla Apostle. And Priscilla, we've been working together on this for a long time. She had some storm damage done to the place that's out there, and it was pretty significant. And that started us down this path of creating a new home. So she had some ideas about what she wanted, and it was trying to get that down on paper. And yes, it's a very challenging lot. And it's sort of a backwards L shape. And the existing home had a little bump out that essentially gets to the back of the property, like it sits on a property line. So in the new design, I guess the thing we were trying to respect, the main back wall of the house, we meet, we're where it was before. So it's 6 feet 9 inches on that L, but that's where it was. The bump out takes it to the property line. So we're trying to respect the existing back wall of the house and then the existing street wall of the house. And the back wall, I mean the lakeside wall. So the lakeside wall is essentially where it is. And we've taken this bump out off. So we no longer go to the property line. And on the street side, we're essentially where the front wall of the house is. We did shift the house over. And in that, the way that L works, and you can see it on the site plan, the majority of her house was looking into the neighbor's shed and then the neighbor's house. It was all the same sort of sight line. So we were trying to shift the house over so that this lake property has a view of the lake. And then we can have a deck that is overlooking the lake and not overlooking an adjacent shed. And it's very tight there. As the house shifts over, we can take advantage of that long L that heads towards the lake, still meeting the 50-foot lakeside setback. The house is 1,369 square feet on the first floor. There's a walkout, so we've got a walkout area that we're adding. That's 1,369. There's a 2-car attached garage that is an addition to that 1369. So the footprint area is 38 by 54, which is 2,052 square feet. So it's, it may be, yes, we know it's large for that lot, but it's not a large house. I mean, Priscilla was working hard to make it as small as she could. I think that's it. We're here to answer any questions. Priscilla, do you have anything you want to add on this? But you're.
It makes it feel even smaller.
That was another piece of trying to move that house over because that shed was a newer addition that sits right at the property line. And if the house stayed back where it was, then we're kind of looking right at that shed. It's virtually on the property line.
I'm sorry, can you comment on, you mentioned there were structures constructed on your neighbor's property after you purchased the property. Could you tell us? Oh, after? Oh. Oh, okay. Do you know when that was? Thank you.
Mark, comments, questions?
I do have some questions and some comments. And while I appreciate your concerns regarding your neighbor, that's not necessarily the reason why we're meeting today and what we're responsible for evaluating today. In regards to the application that was submitted, there's a few notes that I had. One, and I think generally we've all get a chance to view the property. Have we all made a visit to the property and observed it? That the house where it currently sits is right on the property line, basically, towards the lakeside, where there's a shed right there. And I don't know how you'd be able to even build a new structure without going onto your neighbor's property. So I was glad to see that when I'm looking at the drawings here, that it looks like that's bumped out now an additional, correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like about 6'4".
9.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it looks like you've actually improved that encroachment, which to me was encouraging. Three areas that I did have concern with. One is on the setback that would actually go beyond the 20-foot requirement that we have and decrease that to 10 feet. And I've always been supportive of properties like this that have a tough situation of kind of honoring the existing footprint and existing encroachments that have already been established because the house was built there, many of them before variances were even applied. But to actually encroach even further has been a challenge for me to approve when you go beyond what the ordinance is when there's no existing structure there. So on this, when you're looking at the house, it would be on the right-hand side And I'm not sure which,
North,
that's the
north,
north
that's the
side.
north
That's the north side. So the north side setback is very concerning to me. The second is and we always seem to come up with 29.9% seems to be applied a lot. And I guess the question I would need to have validated is that the minimum size house that you can put on that lot and live comfortably? It's an open-ended question there. And the third is there's a proposed deck there. And it looks like that proposed deck would actually be 6 feet from, that would be the south property line after it makes the L shape there. And there's no structure there now, but you're asking then to have a proposed deck in that location that would actually increase that encroachment as well as there currently is no encroachment on that particular leg of that side. So, those are my concerns.
Ed,
Yeah,
comments?
I have, really the primary concern I have is, I agree with Mark, try to improve these properties. You know, I'm always supportive of building in the current footprint or in a property where you can build something similar to the current house, but improve the setbacks. That's even better. So I'm really concerned going from a 37-foot north setback, which is well within compliance, into 10 feet. Now, if you were to expand the house to a 20-foot setback and stay in compliance there, that would alleviate that concern, and even better so if you improve the other two setbacks on the lake side or the south side. So you're improving that, and you're improving that setback on that. I guess it would be the lake side. I think it's referenced line B in the staff report, which is where, you know, you have a longer setback where the L goes out to the lake, but that's where it's in front of your neighbor. So yeah, I have a hard time supporting this application if the application was such where you move the house off of line A and line B in the staff report, improve those setbacks, and you still could enlarge it and go to 20 feet on the north side. I could support that type of improvement, but I can't support going from no encroachment on that north side up to a 10-foot setback there. And I think there's some correspondence from the neighbors that they're opposed to that as well. And that's one of the issues we always face in a situation like this. So that's kind of where I'm at on it. I'd love to see the house improved. I think the current plan isn't really feasible with the additional encroachment on the north side.
As I said earlier, that was my biggest concern with this, only 10 feet on the side over there. This is a very large house. You have the 2588, I believe, the square foot, plus you have almost a full walkout basement. So that's a lot of square footage for a house for a lot this size, and especially to go and encroach further into a setback on the north side, because I'm not for that at all.
Yeah, the 2588 that's that floor area. So that's,
Got it.
Yeah.
I know, Ed.
so that
You
lot
also have a
coverage.
big walkout
actually
basement, that's
2050
probably
too.
about 1,800 square foot walkout.
So it's 1369, the first floor area less, so that doesn't include the garage. So it would be that floor area again.
Got it.
Yeah.
But that's pretty substantial. And the basement also could be made into, if there's bedrooms that needed to be put in the basement, that could also occur with a kick out, walkout. For that basement. So if it's a lack of bedrooms, you know, the basement could have a bedroom in it.
Right. So
Here.
do you feel that?
I'm just saying that, first of all, the 10 foot's my issue, and I'm saying this is an unreasonable request to encroach that far
Okay.
into a setback for a house this size.
Yeah, and right. Okay. Is 20 feet a hard line dimension on that north side?
To me, it is.
And
I
you
can't
can
speak
see,
for anybody else.
you can see how it evolved though, because when we push the house over that far, then there isn't really an opportunity to create a deck that doesn't get into the corner of that L. So that's what we're up against. So I respect what you're trying to achieve. So if we try to meet that 20-foot setback on that north side, what flexibility is offered for the south side?
Can I make a comment regarding this?
Mhm.
Is, as I read, and I'm glad that was included in the staff report here for us, that it appears that the township is considering changing the standards for that with the proposed. I'm not sure if you're aware of that or not.
But Mark, that doesn't
That-
come into
that
play
does-
for our
I-
hearing tonight at all.
I concur completely that that does not change my decision-making for tonight's value at all. What I was suggesting is Ed had said and was inquiring about something in the future, which was why I'm mentioning this, that there is consideration within the township to change the requirements. Right now, the requirement is 20 feet.
Mhm.
And I'm pretty firm with 20 feet.
I can
Un-
tell.
Unless there's something pre-existing.
Mhm.
That there was a structure already there.
Right.
If there is not a structure there right now, I'm firm with 20.
Okay.
But in the future, for your consideration, that may change.
Is that proposal been put out yet?
Could you address that, Scott?
Yeah, I can address that. It would not change the 20-foot side yard setbacks on this lot, as this lot is 80 feet wide. So because this lot is 80 feet wide, even though it has the weird L shape at the back area, the 80-foot wide section is where the house is located, and because it's at the front yard set, or the, in this case, the rear yard setback on a lake lot, that's where the width of the lot is dimensioned from. So the 20-foot side yard setbacks would still be a requirement under the new proposed ordinance changes, which have not gone to a public hearing. They'll be noticed for a public hearing on May 18th.
And what are those proposed
Can-
at?
So what will happen is for lots, what's proposed is for lots that are less than 80 feet in width. There'll be a sliding scale. So, between 80 and 70 feet, we'll have a 15-foot minimum setback. Between 70 and 60 will be a 10-foot minimum, 25-foot aggregate. 60 to 50 will be a 10-foot minimum. Between 50 and 40, we'll have a 5-foot minimum and 15-foot aggregate. And 40-foot or less will have 5-foot minimums.
So this,
So, and then it also alters the floor area ratio and lot coverage under its current iteration for lots under an acre. Those both raised to 30%.
That's a proposal. It's not approved.
It's a proposal.
Haven't
It's
even
not
heard.
approved yet. And even if it is approved on May 18th, it would be a recommendation for approval, and then it would go to the first meeting in June for the township board.
right.
And it could be amended by the planning commission at the May 18th hearing. Because there is some talk that maybe it would be better just to not have a floor area ratio, and to allow the lot coverage, height restriction, and setbacks create your allowed floor area, which is how most townships have got rid of the floor area ratio, because the mass of the structure is restricted already by the lot coverage, the height requirements, and those types, and the number of stories that you can have. So
So Scott, just to clarify that the scale that I'm looking at, and I'll be happy to share it with, if you'd like to look at it, Ed, you're welcome to come over and look at, it. But less than 80 feet, there would be a 15-foot minimum variance.
right,
But this is actually 80 feet
that's what it says according to this
towards what
survey
is,
that we have on
right,
here. Yeah.
that would then still be at 20 feet. Is that what the proposal is?
That's what the
is
proposal
suggesting?
is, that is moving forward or moving to
Got it.
the May 18th
Got it.
number. And
Now we're
it's,
discussing a
the dis-
hypothetical, and I don't know why we're discussing a hypothetical, because nobody's reviewed or approved it.
but again, it also, yeah, it's just to inform the property owner.
I appreciate that, and that's helpful information down the road. I
Yeah.
guess the grounds for
Know
the
the answer.
potential variance still would be the depth of this lot. I get that we're 80 feet wide, but the depth we're putting the house is 70 feet. And if we take 35 and 20 from.
Definitely
that's
believe that
15
a
feet.
variance is very, I mean, according to my staff report, a variance is very appropriate because you have an L-shaped lot. for the front and or what we consider the rear because it's a lake property. And then the line B, which is the south property line that's shared between you and 112.
Okay.
All
right.
So, but again, we have this proposal in front of us tonight. It's hard for this ZBA
Right.
to redesign your project. to
Yep.
Meet.
Right. So, and then to back up a bit, so the 6'9" from that upper leg of that L, we're back to where the main house was originally. Putting the 20-foot aside for now, that's a reasonable request in your opinion.
I believe it is.
Okay.
My opinion, one person.
Yep.
You're improving that setback.
Okay, so the 6'9" there is acceptable. And then on the other side, where we have the other 20-foot setback, but we're very close on that lot line. So again, I'm just trying to sort out where this proposal goes. And if we're shifting it left,
Right.
how far left can I go? If I get to 20 feet on one side, what sort of room do I have on the other? If we're making an improvement, we can see where it's at. I think there was
Can
right
we
around
have
4 feet.
Angela ask a couple questions before we discuss it any further, please?
I don't have questions necessarily, but I will reiterate what Steve said about the lack of the stake survey. Something that I consider, or that we have to consider as a ZBA, is impacts to the neighborhood
Mhm.
of the proposed project. And it was hard for me to visualize impacts to view shed from, across the street and things like that without having the stake survey. So that's a comment I'll make. And unlike maybe some of the ZBA members, I consider the 80 feet lot width to warrant side yard variances because it is, 80 feet is only 53% of 150 feet, which is, the minimum. Is that right?
Correct.
So the minimum width of a lot under the LR district is 150 feet. So I think you're at 53% of that with the 80 feet. So to me, I would consider encroachments on both sides, but I do agree that the 10 feet on the north side is a pretty extreme encroachment, but I would entertain something less than 20 feet, but not 10 feet.
All right.
Should we now take some public comment?
Yeah, sure.
Anybody have any public we have letters from a Kathy Owsley and Anna Solomon. Are either one here? Okay, that's fine. Please stand up and voice your comments.
You want them to come to the podium and speak in the microphone
To me, it doesn't matter, but.
Yeah.
for the
Yeah,
recording?
yes.
Yeah.
You have to come up here. Sir, what's your name?
Let me introduce myself. I'm the 20 feet.
And your name is what, sir?
Leonard Solomon.
Okay.
And my main concern and only concern about this, at least at this point, as its perspective, is the 20-foot setback. That will take 10 more feet towards my property. I have a shallow well, in other words, as such. And as a result of that, I am really concerned about the fact that whatever the building that takes place, potentially that well might be impacted, but the closer you get to that well, the greater the chance for an impact on it. And that's about a $15,000 expenditure. So under the circumstances, that's what is demonstrated in the letter, and that would be my only concern.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? Any other comments, please?
Hi, I'm John Burke. I live across the road, 155 Shoreview.
Is
That's,
that the brick ranch straight across? Right.
yes, directly across from 152. And for 5 years, we put up looking at this ruined house with its wrecked roof and the whole that was protected only by a tarp, which has deteriorated tremendously, allowing rainwater to get in there for years, presumably affecting the safety and health of anyone that went into that house. We appreciate the decision to remove the ruined house and wish that this had actually happened years ago. But we're opposed to building an enlarged new house, given the limited space that's available that would be, end up crowding that very small area for our neighbors. The proposed house requires variances on the north, east, and 2 on the south side, i.e. 3 of the 4 directions. And in addition, the proposed proportion of the house versus the size of the property, it runs against the current rule that you have, which would lead me to ask why we have any zoning regulations at all if we're going to allow people to alter 3 of the 4 dimensions, 3 of the 4 directions of the particular property. Otherwise, it's kind of like going back to a free-for-all that existed before there were any zoning regulations. Thanks.
Hey, thank you. Are there any other discussions? Anybody else want to speak? Okay. All right, so I guess we have some further discussion amongst the board here. Any other further discussions on the variance in front of us?
I guess one point I'd like to clarify, if we were to continue with the meeting as such and to vote on the application as it stands right now. And Scott, if it were not approved, then what are the limitations for the client as far as submitting new applications in the future?
Yeah, you can't submit another application, but it means the same application. So as long as it's been, the application has been amended, it's a different project. So it's the code is set up so that they're not constantly submitting the same thing, so that until they get a yes. So, yeah, so as long as, I mean, I'm sure Ed is listening and going to design something, but you could also table the project if you wanted to table the project to allow the applicants to amend the project.
If we vote on it, they can't submit it again for another year, right? We vote and turn it down.
If you vote, they can't submit the same application in a year. So as long as they amend their proposal, they can resubmit it.
And if it's tabled, they can come back to us whenever in the future.
Yeah, if you table it, because of something the applicant does, there's only a $450 rehearing fee instead of a $595 or something, $590.
Okay.
I think so it's a lesser cost. And they don't have a denial, it's just a tabling.
And this is up
But
to you.
I would ask the applicant, if you are proposing that thing, if they would rather have you make a determination on the project tonight, because the applicant may think that you are going to approve it and would like it, or would like to move the project forward through the courts or something like that. So the applicant can request that you make a determination tonight also.
I don't think that's necessary. I think Phil and I haven't really had a chance to talk, but I think we're probably at the same page that we just table this and then we'll amend and we'll come back with some revisions and a revised site plan.
Okay.
You have an agreement that we'll table this motion?
I'm comfortable with postponing it, yes.
Do we have to take a vote on that?
Yeah, I would take a vote on that.
Upon the applicant's request that we postpone the decision on the application, I make a proposal that we accept that.
We tabled it. I think that's you.
Yes, well.
Postpone, whatever you want to call it,
Right,
it's
right.
fine.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. All right. Thanks. Next agenda item is, I guess you want to talk to us.
Well, yes, so, the,
Are we going to talk about this during the regular meeting and have minutes on it?
yeah, you might as well have it at the regular meeting. So, it's just a discussion item, just, we could put it under comments, concerns, and the zoning board of appeals members, so. Are we on to that? Because there's communications on petitions. I don't know what that one is.
Well, we had 2 letters.
Oh, is that? That should be under,
I think that's a separate business if we want to make some petition for something.
oh, all right.
So for example, we were talking about, well, I think we were talking about some of the stuff proposed.
Right.
I guess that would be a communication and petition, I think.
So I heard tonight, if we want to talk about the thing that's moving forward, I heard tonight that Angela is a little concerned that 80 feet isn't a good number to start at and would like it to be larger. It sounds like, so for side yard setbacks. One of the things, that the planning commission talked about in creating the new regulations were, and the way they came up with the 80 feet and the 20 and 20 is because they're looking at what an appropriate size of a house is, and the 40 feet is what they've decided, so try to create those smaller lots that can have as large as possible, but no larger than 40 feet. And then if you have a larger lot, you can have a width of a house that's larger than 40 feet. That's how they came up with that. But yeah, I mean, your opinion is valid that you think, yes, I mean, maybe it should be 100 feet and 20-foot setbacks, and then you could have wider houses on those smaller lots. So, but I'm just trying to explain to you again, just how they came up with that, where the point was. So, just like as they go down, it keeps the house size until you get down to the really small lots, and you can't really do anything with a really small lot because they're trying to maintain the 5-foot side yard setbacks for public safety purposes on the smaller lots. But as you are incrementally going down, they're trying to keep the width of a house to what an appropriate width of a house would be on a smaller lot.
So the ordinance would still read for the LR district, 150 feet minimum width
Mhm.
with the 20 setback on each side. But you can have anything between 80 and 150. And you would still require the
80 and 2 million.
Right. Oh.
80 and up, because I mean, you could have a LR property that is 350 acres and has a lot width of 2,000 feet across, and you would still only have a 20-foot
Okay. so
side
they-
yard
they pick
setback.
80 as kind of the threshold.
80 is the reason they used the 80 threshold was because that's when the house was 40 feet.
Okay.
So,
So when
and
they,
then as it incrementally goes down, it tries to keep the house size at 40 feet on the smaller lots.
so when they were doing that, it was kind of a proportion thing. is
Right.
What they were evaluating.
Right.
Okay.
And still allowing for view shed on the sides of houses to the lakes. Because that's one of the things that you get with a setback on a lake property is that when you're driving down the street or when you live across the street, you can see between the houses. So by incrementally going down, they're still allowing you to have appropriate size houses, appropriate width houses, but trying to maintain as large of setback between the houses as possible as the lots get smaller.
Okay.
I had a couple questions out there. I know I missed the last few meetings and I apologize. But the planning commission was told that the ZBA approved all of this stuff prior to being presented to them.
No, the planning commission was told that the ZBA had requested that they review the regulations on the setbacks, floor area, and lot coverage.
But this wasn't discussed here on the setbacks until you gave it to the planning commission.
Correct. And the
I
plan,
didn't see anything in meeting minutes about.
right, because you guys don't
Okay.
determine this stuff. The
I got it.
planning commission is your body that looks at the ordinances and
Got
then
it.
makes recommendations
Got it.
on the ordinance.
Right.
I guess living on a lake for many, many years, one of the big issues that I have and other people brought to me is the issue of a house being there for 50 years and it's 15 feet or 20 feet away from the property line. That's how I bought the house. That's how that person bought the house. And now allowing that house to be torn down and come closer to me within 5 foot or 10 foot or whatever. That's one of the real issues I see on lakes. Anybody that has a house that's that far away, you bought it, assuming that house is gonna be that far away. And I guess that's one of my big issues on this.
So Steve, am I understanding your concern with what they're proposing there is if there was currently a 15-foot setback or the existing structure was 15 feet, but because of the lot size, they would actually be able to go to 10 feet
5.
or 5 or whatever,
Right.
but that's okay.
That's a big concern, I think, of anybody that lives on a lake,
Yeah,
of the distance to your neighbors.
excellent. I would
And I would
come to the
hope-
meetings and or send us an email and we can bring that up. Again, so the only time you could have a 5-foot setback would be on the smaller lots. So the likelihood that you're 20 feet away currently would mean that you're more than likely either on your neighbor's property or 0-foot setback.
Oh, you have
on
a
the neighbor's
50 foot, here it says 5 feet minimum, 15 aggregate.
Right,
So it could be 7 feet each side.
right. Or 5 feet on one side and 10 feet on the other. But again, you might live in a house that's only 20 feet wide, but 20 feet is enough for a bedroom and a hallway. So it's what you would consider a shotgun house in most areas. So, what they're trying to do is allow for public safety on those smaller lots and then allow for a house that is a normal width. But I hear what you're saying, that you're concerned with if, let's say they had currently a 20 by 20 foot house on a lot. So like a little tiny baby cottage, and they wanted to build a bigger house and it came closer to you, that would be your concern.
Huge concern. Anybody who lives on a lake will tell you the same thing.
Right.
And I understand that other townships maybe have things similar. I think when you were still working here, you and I spoke about maybe amending this stuff and trying to do a lake.
Well, and I think
looked
you
at
guys-
Dexter Township, I looked at Hamburg, and then you got a better job. It left. I hope it wasn't something I said. But anyway, and I looked at their stuff and it was all the formulas like this, but just because other townships have it that way doesn't mean we have to have it.
No, it doesn't, but I'm
We're a separate
explaining.
Township, and I understand what you're going.
What you don't want to do is just arbitrarily approve setbacks. So when you have a 20-foot required setback on a 40-foot wide lot, you have stated that you're going to allow the house to just remain where it's at. Right? So that's your requirement. So we could write that requirement into the code under the existing, but can you extend it so let's say I have a 0-foot setback on this person's property. Can I extend that the entire length of the property line just because I currently have my cottage over on that side?
Right, and what we've done in those cases, again, at the ZBA, we've requested that people move that over. So you still have at least walking space between you and the property line.
No, I think what Scott was suggesting is if the new structure, you can extend that so
Right.
that the length of it, so even though the singular dimension to the property line is the same, the volume of the area of the new building that encroaches is actually increasing, I think is what your concern
Right.
is.
Right,
I understand that and actually appreciate and support that.
no, I understand, I agree with that. I agree with that part of it. Not taking it further back. The other thing is, you just brought up the point of volume. And we've had a lot of issues with volume, where somebody is building a structure, you have one floor, and then you have a half a floor up here with a couple bedrooms, and you have an area 20 by 20, that's all open air space. Now, the house is tons of volume, but it doesn't come out as FAR
Right,
because there's no floor.
right.
That's a question. I don't really have a huge point on that.
Well, I-
But you have before, I know that.
But yeah, and
Let's
I think
little
that's actually a good point for tonight's discussion, because a few of the things that you had mentioned is, being able to see past the houses and see to the lake and things like that. And volume does come into effect with that, with the height of it
Mhm.
and things. So I wish they would consider that discussion as well, that,
So if you had no upper level, but you had a very steep pitched roof.
yeah, right.
But it didn't encroach, it didn't get over the height.
Exactly. So you have
restrictions.
18-foot ceilings in the peaked roof, and before it was a 312 pitch or whatever, and now you're looking at a this cathedral type ceiling there, and just even the people on the lake looking
And
at
you could write that into your FAR requirements, that
Square footage
vaulted
of open
space
volume.
is
yeah.
Well, that's a
considered,
thought to come
yeah.
into what you want to discuss with planning commission.
yeah, is
Because
considered.
that's been an issue.
Right.
The other issue that we've had a couple instances where people voluntarily pulled it back, but you had some people next to the store over there, and they're all kind of lined up. Those houses have been there since the late 1800s, and they're all X amount of feet from the lake, but they could go 50 foot. So one person was gonna rebuild a house, and they wanted to move it like 25 feet closer to the lake, which still would have been plenty further away from there, but it would have screwed up everybody's sight lines.
So to
You can-
have,
You can say it's injurious to the neighborhood, but you're walking on hot coals when you're saying that.
so have a lakeside
Sight
setback
line.
that is based on the neighbors on both sides.
And I believe, it was right after you left it. We had a house on Ridge Road just before the Legion, brand new build. And they wanted to come within like 60 feet of the lake, which will put almost their whole house in front of the other people's houses on the line here. And we talked them into saying, no, why don't you back it up and be nice to your neighbors? You'd rather have a yard towards the lake instead of a yard towards the road anyway, and they agreed to that. But
So that, I
Same
think
here.
that one, I mean, there is solutions to that problem, and the solution, what I've seen out there is on a lakeside setback. Again, I think that there is a concern over calling your lakeside your front yard setback, just because as we noticed that the architect kept calling it the rear, and I have to call it street side or lakeside because it's very confusing. But the lakeside setback you could create so that if you are on a property that abuts a lake, your lakeside setback is the average of the two homes on either side of you. So it's based off of the existing structures on either side. If there is not a structure on one side of you, then you use the,
structures on the other side.
yeah.
No, that's a good point, because that's.
Oh, and
I've seen,
It is an issue.
I've seen that code before. So, again, that's a great fix. And again, we're going to have, now that I've started here, joint meetings every year where we talk about all the things that need to change in the code. And every year we're going to make our code better, because you want to have the best. Your code is a living document. Your master plan, you do once every 5 years. Once you have a revised master plan, it's supposed to last 40 years so that you're not paying $20,000 to $50,000 every 5 years to revise it. But then you amend your zoning ordinance to correct for these concerns that, like this front yard this lakeside setback. It's a very easy thing to change, and that's like a code cleanup requirement. Like in Linden Township right now, I'm doing a code cleanup that's takes care of 20 different sections of our code that had small problems like this. And I do that. That's only the first of 2 that I'll do this year for the code cleanup. And then we're tackling short-term rentals. So those are the 3 items that came from a list of about 50 items that I took to the joint meeting. So, and said, these are all the items that need work. Prioritize because you have about $12,000 in the budget. So what are we going to do this year?
And personally, I have no problem with the 30%. We've been living kind of by that rule for a while.
Yeah, at the
Getting any
PC
higher than
meeting,
that.
at the PC meeting, Mike wanted to raise that number. And I was like, to Mike, and some of the other commissioners weren't as, I mean, like Tom, because he works here all the time. He's like, no, 30's what we've been approving. I think 30 is appropriate. And trying to talk Mike down on that one, I was like, Mike, we could always start at 30. If it continues to be a problem, we can look at it next year or the year after, or, I mean, because you got to start somewhere, because I don't think you guys have been amending your code for since I left in 2013
How much?
to correct
Right,
for
right.
errors that are out there.
The one concern I would have with the 30% is sometimes the lots, and we ran into one where they're actually adjoining 2 lots. And then, well, the 30% takes them to a 4,000 square foot house. I'm like, I don't know that adjusting it from 20 to 29.9 so that you can have a 4,000 square foot house, to me, that seems out of proportion.
I mean, if you have a big enough lot, why can't you have a 4,000 square foot house, right?
Well, wouldn't you stand with the 20% then? I mean, but only because
Well,
it didn't.
the 20%'s only on, I mean, if you have an acre or more. So if you have an acre or more, you're not going to build it.
But no, but we had one last year where people put
don't-
2
we don't
small
have-
lots together, and the size of it was close to 30%. And it was just dwarfing all the other smaller houses around there, but we did support it. And I was questioning if that was,
I mean,
that was the-
30% lot coverage on a 8,000, let's say they combine 2 8,000 square foot lots, now they have a 16,000 square foot lot. Everybody else only has an 8,000. Shouldn't they be allowed to have a larger home? That's why they bought multiple $250,000 lots.
I
on
think
Kavanaugh Lake.
I think as long as it's not injurious to the neighborhood, that means sight lines.
Well, and once they combine those 2
Ventilation,
lots,
all
guess
that
what?
stuff.
They're now over 80 feet wide, so they've got to meet the 20-foot side yard setbacks.
And I think.
So they're now building a 4,000 square foot house that's further away from their neighbors than if they would have kept the 2 small lots, would have only had to be 5 feet, and would have put up 2,000 square foot houses. So,
And the thing of it is, in that
well,
area-
if that's what the rule is going to be written, I wouldn't be opposed to that. Where I was uncomfortable is when we're overriding the 20% rule for
right.
somebody, was where my basis for
Yeah, so
being concerned about that was.
what
is-
the actual rule is proposed right now.
Right.
That we're proposing.
Right.
Is anything under an acre, you would have the 30%. Anything
Right.
over an acre, you would have the 20% still.
Right.
And it's just a clean, there's the number, let's move forward. Some people on the planning commission wanted to again have a sliding scale as you got smaller to have larger homes, because people that are buying these lake lots want to have these big structures on these really small lots.
Well, you're spending $400,000 for a 30 or 40-foot lot in a knockdown cottage, so
Yeah,
people want to have some square footage.
Well, but just because of the value of something shouldn't
yeah,
mean that you can change the rules.
right.
I
I'm
mean,
not saying change the rules. I'm
Well-
just saying make the rules accordingly.
uh,
It's not like if there's an LR.
but just because a lot costs $400,000, I think they should follow the same rules as somebody that bought a $20,000 lot.
But, well, I,
So we,
There's-
since the ZBA has been approving the 30%.
Right.
That's why I
That's-
suggested 30%, because again, as you read my staff report tonight, there is no way you'll ever get a staff report from me that says to approve an FAR or a lot coverage requirement.
Right.
Because what is the
I think them changing that
particular hardship to
is,
the size, shape, or
very
location
good.
a lot, that they should have a bigger house than everybody else.
I think them changing, and modifying that is very good.
Yeah.
I think
So-
ultimately though, it's, we need to take our concerns to that planning commission meeting. We're kind of hypothetical here, but we're not gonna set this proposal
Well,
here.
our
Take our
our role
concerns
is
to
to
DC.
simply, right. to
No,
think
but
if
as
things are
residents,
fair
we
or not,
can
but
go to the planning commission.
without
say,
question.
We agree with this proposal, we disagree, here's our comments, we have the same right as any citizen.
Yep.
Go to
Right.
that
No,
meeting
no,
and
no.
Yep, yep.
Express our views on that proposal.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
No, I meant as the role for us here in evaluating properties is we really just need to go by what.
Talk about it though, because you are the body that has to enforce these
Right.
regulations again. And that's why I brought it up, because Angela was saying in in her comments on this, is she thinks that maybe 20 feet's still too big for an 80-foot wide lot. And in reality, when you're looking at a variance, you're looking at a very specific, it's a specific lot due to the size, shape, or location. They should have less of a side yard setback than we require by the code.
And when's that meeting gonna
So,
be?
and on this one, you might say, because of the shape of this lot having an L shape, as this lot goes down to the lake, it's only 42 feet wide. You know, so maybe that side should have a lesser setback because of that L shape. I could see making the findings for the variance under that requirement, not just no, maybe I think that 80 feet wide lot should have 15-foot setback, so I'm always going to approve that. That's not what a ZBA does. A
Right.
ZBA doesn't set law. A ZBA enforces the law that's in place and makes exceptions based on the particular hardship standards.
Interprets. When is that meeting gonna be?
May 18th.
Is that also gonna be with the master plan too? So that'd be like an all-nighter?
No.
Good, good. Okay. I'm done running my mouth. You guys, any more questions?
Not regarding that, no.
May 16th. So, yeah, I just had to look up when the Thursday was. The next item, so under comments, we can go to now. Under comments, I just had Steve called me earlier about the survey requirement because they didn't provide a survey. Or they provided a survey and it was too old.
June of 19.
Yeah, it was from June of 19. So I copied what the ordinance actually states for you. And then you know, we should probably talk about what we want the applicants to submit. So as you can see, the ordinance under your zoning Board of Appeals only requires the items in B be submitted as part of the application form. Now, we can interpret that anyway because it says an accurate scaled drawing of the property showing all property lines, dimensions, bearings, angles, correlating to the legal description, all existing and proposed. It doesn't require a survey at this point. Where it does require a survey is once you submit for a zoning compliance permit under section 30.36, which is on the back page of the little handout that I had. It goes, an application for a certificate of compliance for a parcel of land, only a parcel of land in the LR district shall be accompanied by a staked survey of land, which is certified at it, for which the certification is requested. The survey shall be signed and sealed by the land surveyor. So, you know, right now, the code doesn't require that we require a survey for a variance. Why you would or would not require a variance is variances are costly or surveys are costly. You know, I asked John Pyatt today how much an average survey costs. He said the cost is between $1,500 and $2,500 based on, he said lake lots are usually more expensive because the surveys that were done originally for lake lots are really old and really bad. So,
I think the discussion we had and the question comes down to, we've always had a survey done within the last 2 years, I think Carol's requirement. I thought it was a requirement someplace we couldn't find. he couldn't find a requirement for the survey to be done prior to us, but one would have to be done if we approve something, and it would have to be done and provided to him after we approved
On lake lots.
for Lake Lot. But I thought that there's too many holes there where why don't we get a survey beforehand so we know exactly what we're talking about? Instead of somebody going, hey, I found an iron over here and, you know, could have been an old nail. Don't know. And he
Right,
thinks
right.
it's over here, and then they'd have to come back to us again and still get a survey and, you know, get it done right the first time. Scott said, well, if you're turned down, then it's a waste of $1,500 or $2,000.
Yeah.
I'm going,
So why it becomes a problem, and it won't become a problem here because we approve a lot more than we deny. But where it would become a problem is if you were in like Detroit or somewhere where they deny 95 to 90 and not like you guys went to that's how many you usually deny. So if I was asking Joe Smith to get a survey and I know 90% chance he's going to get a denial, he's more than likely going to claim that I'm asking him to provide too much information up front for something that we're not going to
but
approve.
it's up to our determination for us to provide guidance to him whether we want a survey done prior to a submittal coming here. What do you think?
We might want to change the ordinance at that point too.
I am far more comfortable with my evaluations, looking at a property with the aid of the property being staked.
Well,
For me to,
stakes-
no, well, but to do that, they'd need to survey it if they're gonna stake it. I mean, I don't want them just to stake it, but that those stakes actually mean something.
well, a stake survey is not actually a drawing, and I think it's a much cheaper process to have a
But-
surveyor go out and stake. your property.
But to have not only myself, but any neighbors or whatever gives them additional elements that they're better able to visualize what the project and where the project's going to be and any potential conflicts that might arise. It's very helpful to me. And I fashion myself as pretty good at visualizing things, but seeing that, and even when I build things on my own, laying it out ahead of time and seeing it is so much more helpful than simply looking at a schematic. As far as requiring it, is that what your question was, Steve?
Correct, require good prior to submittal for ZBA
I would be supportive of that.
also. Ed,
I would be too.
Angela?
So are we talking about the
A
state?
survey,
stake survey?
both, a survey and a stake survey prior to submittal.
I feel like if they have a recent survey.
What's recent?
That's a good question.
I think Carrie used to use a 2-year time frame. But, I mean, this was back 4 years, 5 years, this one,
This one, I don't know,
5 years old.
2019, I think.
I feel like it is a big cost. So a stake survey is a lot less expensive?
Well, because they don't actually draw anything up, all they go out there and do is stake your corners
Okay.
of your site for you.
How accurate is that?
I mean, 100% accurate because they are just not drawing up or sealing.
But
But that's
the stakes would still have to comply with
Yeah.
what we're approving anyhow, correct?
Yeah, but what are we approving?
Yeah, you still want a drawing, although they're giving you what's existing on the site and you're actually approving what a architect is drawing on top of that survey, right?
That's correct.
So in reality, this drawing is just, I mean, they're drawing a square on top of a piece of land.
Right, but the other thing about that is,
And they know what the width of the land is and what the dimensions of the
but
land
the other thing
That
about that too is
goes
though,
anywhere.
if we're looking at this drawing, we can reference the drawing as to what we're approving, as opposed to saying 2 foot 3 inches from this corner, 4.8 inches from this corner.
No, you're going to require a drawing regardless, right?
Right.
Yeah, drawing is not the thing. It's the survey that's the requirement that's above and beyond what your code requires.
Well, I don't know. You guys have further discussion, but I'm 100% having a survey and a stake survey.
That's fine.
I think that's reasonable. I mean, most of the people, if they're gonna be doing any kind of addition, it's gonna be thousands and thousands of dollars.
And if you're on the lake, these are
And
rich.
and if
There-
you, And if you're doing something like that, you don't get a survey on your own. You're not
Well,
doing yourself
yeah.
a favor.
Many times in doing that survey, they find problems. So remember that house that was on the other guy's lot when they
We've
surveyed
had
it?
several of those.
Yeah, and like,
We've had garages
did,
on other.
did they
people's lots.
realize this property was on the property line? I bet they didn't know that until that survey
What
happened.
do you guys do if there's an existing house that is shown to be on somebody else's property? Do you allow them to add to it, or?
If
Do you
they're the
make 'em
ones
tear it down,
encroaching,
or-
if they're the ones encroaching on the neighbor's property, they're gotta pull it off. Or any of their structures we find on somebody else that we're not approving it till it comes up.
If they're the applicant,
If they're the
Yeah,
app?
right.
Excellent. That would be what I would suggest,
Yeah, we've had a few of those.
because I'm sure they didn't get it approved.
Right.
Yeah.
You can't build on somebody else's property.
Do we have any
Not
other
my book.
issues?
I don't think so.
Was there, last month, we, postponed or tabled, Dennis Michaelak, and the, shed.
He hasn't resubmitted.
There is additional information that he's submitted, but it won't be, he's not 100% ready.
Okay,
But he will be ready for, next
the
month.
next month meeting.
So I think yesterday received his payment for $450 additional. I
Okay,
still have a request out for him to give me the new setback to the rear property, well,
I wasn't part,
front property line in this case, 'cause it's on the lake, so. the
I,
front property
I'm,
line should-
I must have been absent when that was reviewed. And
The first one?
yeah, I wasn't part of, I must have been out of town or whatever for that one.
November, December.
Regardless, I don't recall doing it, and that I have more senior moments now than I care to.
Yeah, it's been
Um,
reviewed 3 times now.
But anyhow, there was no survey done ahead of time because of where his original barn was.
No, there was a survey done ahead of time. His survey, he did not build his or place his structure where his surveyor said he would.
I was just curious and that, because generally we permit things if there's an existing structure to stay where it is.
I don't
But-
remember the details of it. Can we
But then
talk
this
about it
was
next time?
moved 4 feet off the line, and Dennis was mentioning during last month's meeting that it was actually on the property line.
Yeah, that's what he said.
So I was perplexed by those two inconsistencies. Like usually we were saying, okay, if something, and I can see where we say, well, we don't want you to build it on the property line. What was the decision made just to move it off the property line by 4 feet, or what was, because that was
his-
upsetting to Dennis. And I didn't know where
Again-
that originated. from.
Again, I want to reiterate that just because the shed is somewhere existing doesn't mean that when they remove that shed, they get to put it back in that location. I mean, there's lots of sheds in this township that can guarantee I went out to the corner here, picked up a shed and just threw it on my property. Did he get a shed approved at a 0
Make a
foot?
motion to close this meeting and you guys can talk later.
I'll second that.
Sure.
Favor?
Aye.
Aye.
But to answer your question, his surveyor from September